record here. Will someone be kind enough to actually tell the rest of the class what we're going to cover today on day 2? So I think we talked about this yesterday, where to find this information. But if you guys want to take a few seconds, and if someone could put into Slack what we're going to cover today. Actually, if you wanted to find out what we're going to cover each day for the first 3 weeks of the course, where could we find that? Very good to know. On the wiki, yes, kind of. Let's see if it's officially in the wiki. Let's see what Alejandra put in here. Perfect. Thank you, Alejandra. So yeah, if you guys want to click on that link, I don't even think this is technically in the wiki. I think this is still kind of in the main WDI remote media repo, which will be where, this is where we're going to be living the next 13 weeks. But yeah, just as a quick review, if you're curious about what we're going to cover any given day in the future, or if you want to read ahead or something over the weekend, we'll usually give you a heads up anyway. But if you go to the main repo and scroll down to the very bottom, there's a couple of links, course content links. And you can click on any of those and see what we're going to cover any given day. So then there at the bottom, there's those links. And the Unit 1 content outline is what, I think that's what Alejandra put in there. So just an FYI for you guys. Just to reinforce how, I think Colin mentioned how much time and effort he spends on the wiki, and it's really true. We put a lot of good information on there. We're very thoughtful about it, putting supplemental reading links or tutorials. We're gonna put all of our YouTube lesson links up there kind of on a daily basis in the evening. So just wanna get you guys in the good habit of looking there first for questions before you ask us, before you even ask a teammate. Part of being a developer is being very self-sufficient. So just see if you can find the information there in your repo first and foremost. Now, what we're gonna do today, we have a lot to cover today. Some of this I'm hoping will be mainly review or familiar from your fundamentals pre-work, which is really good. Quick show of hands, who has completely finished the pre-work? Be honest.
Does finish means it works exactly like you want it to?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Does finish mean work, or finish mean I did area assignments and maybe it didn't work at the end?
Sure, fair enough. Finished means that you've at least given the college try and you've at least read or been exposed to the entire, I forget, there's 10 sections or something of the pre-work. Okay. Who's actually worked through it? Again,
I just finished last night, so.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah, the main thing is just so you've at least read that content and you're somewhat familiar with the topics. I think we tried to message this yesterday. The goal of this course isn't necessarily to be an expert or to get everything right all of the time, because that just doesn't happen. We just want you to have been exposed to it and familiar with it. And I'm going to mute Maddie B as well. Cool. So like I said, you guys have a really great advantage, I think, of having this 2-week break. I've worked with cohorts that have ended before the break, and some cohorts that have been, they've had that 2-week holiday break. And I really want to emphasize and stress to you guys, any college football fans in here? Anyone? Oh my goodness, no college football fans? Oh my goodness, who am I gonna talk to? So I went to the University of Alabama, so I'm a huge Alabama fan.
Me too.
You went to University of Alabama?
Mm-hmm. Roll Tide.
Who said that?
Sophia.
Sophia, no way. Where are you, Sophia?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Where are you located?
Oh, I am now in Sarasota, Florida, but
okay.
Spent 4 years
cool.
in Tuscaloosa.
That's cool. Yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, well, you'll be my buddy then. Here's the random point I'm trying to get at. So for college football, you know how they have the bowl games, they're generally after the holidays. And so a lot of times you'll see these teams like they're just killing it before the holidays. And then they take like 2 weeks off and they eat and they sleep and they get lazy and all that. And they come back after the holidays to play this bowl game. And they're usually like not even the same team, right? They're out of shape, they're out of conditioning. So it's like night and day. So I don't want that to happen to you guys. I want you guys to enjoy your holiday, but I want you to take advantage of these 2 weeks because not a lot of cohorts get that advantage. So if there's stuff that you still feel a little shaky on, that's going to be a really good time. You're going to have 2 weeks of class and then 2 weeks to try to, reinforce stuff. You'll have a sense of what this class is about. And if there's anything that you feel a little weak on, you'll have that opportunity to work on it. Not to mention, we'll give you guys a lot of stuff to work on over the holidays. So today what we're going to cover is we're going to go over Git and GitHub. A lot of this should be review. And this afternoon, we'll start this before lunch if we have time, and I hope that we will. We're going to do kind of a JavaScript intro and then talk about JavaScript control flow. So these first 2 weeks, there's not really a lot of new material. If you've gone through the pre-work, it's mainly maybe just a little bit of a deeper dive on what you already have been exposed to. And so that's the goal. So I just posted into Slack. I put the README, the lesson README that we're going to go through first this morning. So if you want to follow along, that's great. I'll also be pasting screenshots into Slack. So if you just want to focus on Slack, that's totally cool. I'll be putting all of the instructions and all the stuff you need to know in there to try to make your lives easier. And here are some of the objectives we're going to hit. So you guys have already installed Brew and Git, which is good. We're going to talk a little bit more about version control. So version control is something you're going to be using throughout your development lives. It can be a little tricky and a little dense, and that's okay. Out of the huge world of version control, in this class we're only going to use maybe like 10 commands at the most. And this is something that you're going to be doing every day. I'm not very good at memorizing stuff, particularly on purpose. Anything that I remember, because I have a horrible memory, it's just because I've done it so many times. And so a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today, it's just going to become second nature through repetition. So don't worry about trying to memorize it. That's what documentation and taking notes is for. We're going to talk about the difference between Git and GitHub. We're going to get a little bit of practice using Git to push to a GitHub repo. So who's actually, I know you guys all have GitHub accounts. Have you guys pushed to a GitHub repo or cloned a GitHub repo? Okay, cool. So we'll get a little bit more practice with that. We'll go through a couple of basic Git commands, talk about the difference between different remotes, origin, upstream, distinguish between a couple of different environments, the local and remote environments. And then if we have time, we'll talk a little bit about forking and cloning repositories. So this morning you guys set up your SSH keys with GitHub, yes? So we should be in good shape. So today we'll actually fork and clone down the media repo so that you'll have it locally, which would be a huge benefit. So to get started, I want you guys to take maybe 1 or 2 minutes and think about these questions that I put into Slack. So why would we even use version control in the first place? What are some advantages to using this technology or this technique, if you will, of version control? So spend a few minutes and think about those bullet points that I just put into Slack. And then as you're thinking about them, anything that comes to mind, go ahead and put those into Slack, anything that pertains to those bullet points. And we'll do a quick walkthrough before we move forward. So let's take about a minute to go through that exercise. All right, I see a couple of answers here in Slack. Christina, do you want to come on mic and maybe elaborate on your two answers that you put into Slack as it pertains to the questions? Why version control? Why are we learning about this on day 2?
Sure. I remember when I was working somewhere else, I had to do a lot of writing, and we would just say file, like Microsoft Word, file upon file upon file upon file, and then you just get cluttered up with all these revised, updated, revised, revised, and it kind of like helps avoid that. And it lets you be able to see your changes rather than having to try to like open up multiple files and like compare them line by line. And then you can probably also be working in different places at the same time, working collaboratively on projects and kind of going back and forth and sharing what you have.
Yeah, that's awesome. So not only like personally is it a huge advantage. So what do you guys use nowadays, like rather than like Microsoft Word? What do we all use, like generally speaking, to like save? Yeah, Google Docs. I mean, so not only does that track your version controls, but I can be on my laptop, I can be on my, my iPhone. And so not only does it track the version control, but I can access that document on any device, which is really handy. Not to mention being able to collaborate with other people. It makes it so much easier. Yeah, I remember those days of having like 30 different versions of a Word doc. I mean, man, that's a pain. This is Microsoft Word calling now, actually. Kidding. Sorry about that. Deb, would you mind coming on mic and elaborating on the answers that you put into Slack?
Yeah, let's see. So perhaps you've been assigned to work on a new feature, but you don't want to impact the existing code. So you can take a snapshot, so to speak, of the existing code and go experiment off on your own, make sure it works, figure it out, and then insert it back so that other people on your team can take advantage of the code that you wrote.
That's awesome. And you put a word into Slack that's very important. What do you call that when you want to go and work on like a separate version of the code and such? What would you be creating to work on?
Branch.
A branch, yeah. So I think that should have been in the pre-work. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. But yeah, creating different branches so you can work on new features and not worry about damaging that main master branch. So you can go off and work on a version of the code, work on different things, and then when it's fully baked, when it's ready to be integrated into the main master branch, you can merge it in, and then everyone will have access to that new source code. That's excellent. David, do you want to come on mic and elaborate on your answer, please?
Basically, what I said is like, if you don't have the version control, when you're trying to collaborate with someone, you have two files. You kind of have to compare line by line on what they added. So it kind of makes it hard to collaborate without it.
Yeah, you guys are busy, high-paid, high-stressed, highly functioning developers. No one's got time to go line by line and check differences in code. So version control takes care of that for us for sure. Mike, you want to come on mic, no pun intended, and elaborate on your answer? Mr.
Mike, you're muted.
Yeah, if you want to come off mute.
Yeah, just similar to what Christina was talking about. You would have to just save them and send files back and forth. You wouldn't be able to have an easy way to compare files or work through those changes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it looks like Matthew, kind of a similar sentiment. Yeah, Dropbox, just like show of hands, who likes, so Google Docs versus Dropbox, who likes Google Docs better or Google Drive? Who's a Dropbox person? Okay. Yeah, I go back and forth. Google Drive is a little cheaper, but the Dropbox interface I find is a little bit easier to manage for sure, in my humble opinion. Audrey, do you want to come on mic and elaborate on your answer, please?
I was pretty much just backing off of Mike's answer because I was thinking the same thing. And I was just thinking about when I was reading it, I was remembering a time that I had to switch my computer once. And so it was something like, I don't remember how many files that I had, but I had to put it on one computer and then reinstall it on my computer when it came back online. And I remember it was very difficult because I had to like keep the computers next to each other. I had to get a cord. We didn't have any cords to directly make the computers work together. So we had to figure out how to work through the network and Bluetooth them together and stay near each other, even though the computer that was holding my stuff belonged to someone else. So it was really hard on us just to be able to do that. And that was just music files. It wasn't anything important. It was just my music. So when I was thinking of this, I was saying to myself, if it was something like code, it would be that much more tedious to have to like figure out my schedule and someone else's schedule and be in the same area just to make sure that our computers can sync up towards each other so that we can work together in something versus like, I'm home and you're home and we're doing this right now and I don't have to, come driving miles out to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I would disagree. You said that your music is not that important, and it absolutely is important in my opinion.
I got Spotify now.
There you go. These are all excellent answers, so thanks for sharing. The one thing that wasn't really touched upon, it's a little note in that screenshot, something that I think is really cool and important, is what if we want to get a new version of a piece of software? So yesterday you guys installed Homebrew, for example. So if you want to install a new version of Node or a new version of Atom or something, Homebrew is a small example of a tool that automatically will keep all of the software in your system fresh, right? So that's another type of version control. Every time there's a new release, you have this piece of software that will manage all of that stuff for you, which is really nice. Let me put another screenshot into Slack. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between Git and GitHub as it pertains to version control. Before we dive into this, does someone want to come on mic and maybe give us the quick and dirty difference between Git and GitHub? What's the difference? How are they related?
I might have like a, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I don't know if this is correct enough from what I remember, is that Git is a software in the terminal, and GitHub is a cloud-based, I guess, application that uses Git. Like in my least technical way, I guess.
Yeah, that's that's like 85, 90% there. Does someone want to add anything to that?
The way I understand it is Git is basically like a protocol for version control, whereas GitHub is the company that, hosts software on their website.
Yeah, that's a really, so if we combine those two explanations, Git is software that's local on your machine that actually manages version control. All that GitHub is it's a cloud-based platform that just stores Git repositories. So, I mean, you could store Git repositories on Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever. GitHub is just a really well-designed cloud-based device for storing these repos. GitHub in itself doesn't really do that much version control. It does a little bit. You can create branches and such. But GitHub is just a place to store your Git repositories, to share code, to keep track of your own code, to store it somewhere else. That's what we're going to talk about here next. I put a screenshot into Slack. I don't want to bore you guys with the details. So if you guys want to read through it, I'm just going to hit some of the high points. The most important thing really is just to keep in mind, Git is not GitHub. They're two separate entities. So Git lives locally on your device, and GitHub is a cloud-based platform. So Git is a program that you run from the command line, like Alejandra said, and it's a distributed version control system. So programmers use Git so that they can keep a history of all the changes to their code. Like we talked about earlier, you can roll back to previous versions. You can make branches to work on maybe experimental new features and not worry about damaging that main code base. So think about some version control tools or processes that you've used. We've talked about a few. Have any of you guys worked on any type of version control, maybe in the workplace, maybe something other than like Google Docs or some sort of Microsoft Word or something? Has anyone used some sort of version control in their former jobs or careers? that you can think of? Maybe if it was even an internal tool that was built at your company, or maybe a different type of version control. Alan, I see that you raised your hand. Yeah, go for it.
I used to make safety data sheets for products, and every time we edited a safety data sheet, we had to add, like, in the log at the end, basically what we changed and why. So,
cool. So, like, you manually had to write the changes. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't know if this counts, but when I use Google Docs, I have my version control on the sidebar. So say I can go back and see the changes that I've made. And I usually use that with collaboration with classmates. So we're working on a paper together, and you can see what changes have been made, and we can go back and forth.
Yeah, that's excellent. Has anyone used another version control? There's one, it's not quite as robust, or sorry, it's not quite as maybe well used as Git, but has anyone used something called Subversion before? Like Deb, I don't know, maybe if you've encountered that. Okay. It's just like, it does the same thing as Git. It's just like Coke and Pepsi or something, but just curious. A little bit of jargon. So I think Colin touched on this yesterday, but if you want to get really technical, a code base in Git is referred to as a repository or a repo for short, just to be really semantic. And Git was also created by Linus Torvalds, I think I'm pronouncing that right, who was the principal developer of Linux. So we all owe him a tremendous debt of gratitude. So what is GitHub? Because these two technologies work very closely together. And you guys have already pretty much nailed this. So GitHub is a hosting service for Git repositories. By the way, does anyone know what framework GitHub is built upon?
Ruby?
Yes, very good. Yeah, it's actually built on Ruby on Rails. When I share my screen, I'll show you guys a Chrome extension that I just am addicted to called Built With. Has anyone heard of this extension? Yeah, Deborah, yeah. Oh my God, I'm addicted to that thing. So if you, well, I'll show you when we share the screen, but I love going to websites and being like, I bet this is a Ruby on Rails site, or I bet this is built in Angular, and then you click on the button and it shows you the technologies under the hood. It's a lot of fun. I have a lot of free time. So GitHub is a hosting service. It's also a web interface to explore other Git repositories. So we talked yesterday about plagiarism, which is a big no-no. That being said, one of our big jobs as developers is to investigate and learn new technologies, learn how to do stuff and fix things, how to learn new, implement new features. And a huge way to find that information is on Git. So if there's an application that you really admire, or it's like, how did they do that? GitHub is really, really amazing to go look at source code and get a sense of what folks are doing, to the extent that that code is public and not, a private repo for whatever reason. GitHub is also a social network of programmers. So for example, we have our WDI Remote Matey repo. We all belong to it. You guys will be creating issues. We'll be pushing out new lessons and homeworks and such. So we have kind of a social network within this class, not to mention within General Assembly as a larger organization. We can have individual accounts. You can follow other users and star your favorite projects. That's something we'll probably be doing as we go throughout the course, just to establish kind of your social developer relevance and such, particularly with outcomes. So we want to make sure that we follow each other on LinkedIn and on GitHub and stuff, even on Twitter if you have that. Developers can access code bases on other public accounts if you want to do some research. And then GitHub uses Git, obviously. Can you use Git without GitHub? So I'll ask, let me put this into Slack. Give me a thumbs up if you agree with this. You can use Git without GitHub. I should have done a poll for this one, but give me a thumbs up if you agree with that statement. You can use Git without GitHub. Or if you want to give me a pirate sign, that's going to be my go-to for this cohort since we're WDI Matey. You guys are going to be seeing this a lot from me. See if I can find him. That's Santa. That's not a pirate. And I'll find him in a minute. I've been blowing up our instructor Slack channel with this pirate emoji. Yeah, so it looks like we have a lot of thumbs up. The answer is yes, of course, you can use Git without GitHub. They're completely separate entities. So you can init a local Git repository on your machine. You don't ever have to push it to GitHub. Of course, it's going to be a pretty good idea just to have that stuff saved somewhere in case your computer blows up or if you want to share that code. But they're completely different entities for sure. Christina says, I downloaded the GitHub desktop app. What do you think about using the app? Just curious. I have used that in the past. I don't use it. I kind of prefer to do stuff longhand. If you want to use it, that's cool. But yeah, like Christine mentions, I would agree with Christine. I think throughout the course, we want you guys to not to struggle. That's the wrong word. But we want you guys to do stuff kind of the manual way. As we get throughout the later in the course, when you guys are comfortable, of course, you guys can use shortcuts or use Atom packages to make your lives a little bit easier. But we would just prefer that you kind of make sure that you feel confident and solid, because you may go to a shop that doesn't use GitHub, the native app or something. That's a good question. But hey, man, what you do in your own time is none of my biz. So yes, you can use Git without GitHub. Yeah, any questions before we move forward? We're going to get to a little bit of a code along and give you guys some like exercise time. But any questions about version control, Git versus GitHub? Okay, cool. I'm going to put a little bit of jargon into Slack. We're just going to run through this. Again, you don't have to memorize this stuff, and I don't like beating you over the head with this, because eventually this stuff is just going to make sense just from doing the repetition. But I'll briefly walk through this information just so you've been exposed to it. Why is Git tricky to understand? Well, because it's a huge piece of software that does a lot of stuff, and we're only going to be using like a small, crucial part of it. Git is tricky to understand because describing how it works, like many things in programming, requires a breadth of technical knowledge. This is going to be a tricky mindset to work with at first. So we alluded to this yesterday. I would encourage you guys as you go through this course, there's going to be a lot of stuff that you may not completely understand immediately. We all want to know how the sausage is made, and that's totally cool, but it's not always going to click immediately. I can turn on this light switch and have the light in the room. I don't have to stress about where the electricity is coming from. I can get in my car and I can drive my car, but I don't have to stress about how internal combustion works. So I would encourage you guys to be mindful of that throughout this course. Try not to get so caught up so much in the weeds and how it works. For this 13-week course, if you can get it to work, worry about the how later. We just want to get code shipped and deployed. That's kind of our goal. I put a little bit of an image here into Slack. We're about to walk through this, and I think this should be somewhat familiar from your pre-work. When we talk about trees, when we talk about version control, that's a term that you'll hear. So even though you don't need to know how they work specifically under the hood right now, it's useful to know that your local repo consists of 3 main trees maintained by Git. There's the working directory, which holds the actual files that you're working on. There's the index, which acts as a staging area. So when you go into the command line, you do a git add. That's going to move your files from the working directory to that middle area, the index. So it's keeping track of your files, taking kind of a snapshot. And then the head points to the last commit that you've made. So we do a git add, then a git commit, and that officially puts the snapshot into memory. And that commit then becomes the most current head, the most current version of your repo, of your code base. And you can always roll back to different commits in history if you want. So let's see this in action. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. You know what, let me put this into Slack. Again, I don't want to walk through this in too much detail because we're just going to walk through it and talk about it. But here's a little bit more of a detailed image of what we're going to walk through. So we have those 3 trees, And this is an image more if you talk about the Git lifecycle of files and of your repo. So this is the lifecycle of a Git tracked file. So we start all the way on the left-hand side. We're about to walk through this. When you first touch or create a new file, it's going to be untracked, right? So in order for Git to know about that file, you first have to initially add that file. You have to make Git aware of it and tell Git that you want to track the changes in this file. So you'll add the file. It'll go through unmodified, modified if you make changes, in the staging area. You can edit the file. You can stage the file using git add, git commit. You can remove the file if you decide you want to delete it or if you don't want to track those changes. And then once you get all the way to the right to all the git adds and you have everything staged, nice and ready to make a snapshot or a commit, then you can run git commit and it'll send you back to that beginning of the unmodified because you have kind of a clean slate at that point. So I'll leave that in Slack for you guys to read. Let's just walk through these and see if you guys have any questions. I'm hoping that this is a little bit of a review, but let's use Git. So I'm going to share my screen now. So if you just want to watch for a minute or two, that's cool if you want to follow along, but I'm going to give you guys a few minutes in a second to recreate the steps that I'm doing. So I'm going to share my screen. Don't be alarmed. I'm going to totally overwhelm your screen. And so remember, if you want to stop the share, there's a little kind of in the middle of your Zoom bar. You can turn off the kind of the full screen if you want to shrink down what you're seeing of my screen. Just FYI. So if you guys want to follow along, go ahead and open up a terminal window down here. Or you can just watch, and I'll give you guys a moment to do this in a second. I'm just going to do these commands for this kind of walkthrough on my desktop, just so I can dump this stuff later. But the first thing I'm going to do, let me make this larger for y'all, is I'm going to make a directory on my desktop. I'm going to call this test repo, just for fun. Test repo. I need to be sure to CD into this repo if I'm going to do anything with it. I'm really bad about making repos and then I forget to actually CD into it. And then I'm like git initting my desktop or something. Don't let that happen, you guys. I love you guys too much. Okay, so we're in the test repo. Now the first step in getting version control, getting the Git software to start tracking your changes is we do a git init, kind of the first command that we're going to do. And then you should see some sort of message, some sort of initialized empty Git repository, and then the path to the repo. And so now we have a working directory. We don't have any files yet, and that's okay. We'll do that here in a bit. But go ahead and take a minute or two and go ahead and repeat those steps, and we'll move forward. And give me a thumbs up in Slack when you've repeated those steps. Give me a thumbs up right here, the screenshot that I just put into Slack. So once I get 8 thumbs ups, I will move forward. Cool, so we have 8. Very nice. So it's here in the README, but if you want to put it into Slack, how do we look at hidden files from the terminal? What's the command to see hidden files? So we have a command to see all the files that are visible, but then if we want to see all the hidden ones as well, yeah, ls-a, yeah, very nice. So I'm going to do actually an ls.la or al, either one. And this is just a different way to view the contents of your repo. It gives you a little bit more information. So right now we don't have any, we haven't touched any files. We'll do that next. But if you do this locally, you'll notice that you should have kind of a current directory with a dot. You'll have a ... which would be going up a directory. which would be my desktop in this case. And then we have this hidden Git folder, this .git. So remember that hidden folders are designated with a dot before the name. And I can totally go into that if I want. I can cd into Git. And now if I do a ls-la, look at all these files. So this Git repository, there's actually a lot going on. We don't need to go into this or worry about it because version control and Git is managing it for us. But just to demonstrate that there's actually, there's some meat here in this directory, this .git directory. Head, branches, so if we're going to create branches. So this is actually some pretty cool software that exists in this hidden folder, this hidden directory in our test repo now on our desktop. It's pretty cool.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What was the meaning of the dot and dot dot again? I missed it.
Does someone want to come on mic and explain the meaning of the dot and dot dot? So we have a dot here and a dot dot. What do those represent?
The dot represents where you currently are, like you've done. If you do a cd dot, it's where you currently are. So where you're currently sitting, a dot dot backs up one to the parent.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Deb. Yeah, so I just did an open dot, which means open the folder, the Finder window for everything in this directory that I'm currently in. So when I do an open dot, you can see that it opens my .git folder. It just opens all of that stuff. It's just the terminal is letting you know that you have these options available to you. So if I did a cd ... I would go back up to my test repo. So we were in the .git folder, now we're in the test repo. So the dot refers to the current location, dot just sends you up one level.
It's a shortcut.
Yeah. Cool. So let's actually, yeah, sure. No, thank Deb. Hey, man. That's all her. I'll be sending out gold stars later. I want to put up like a piece of poster board here with everyone's names, and we'll get gold stars for participation. And each gold star means that Christine will give you 10 minutes of extra attention during project week, one-on-one time. I haven't actually talked to Christine about that, but I'm sure she will have no issue with that arrangement.
Sure.
That's how we work with the pirate theme. We just come up with stuff willy-nilly. Christine, you're gonna no. All right. Anyway, I'm just messing with Christine. Let's go through this next section. If you want to watch me for like 60 seconds, and then I'll give you guys an opportunity to follow along. So we're just going to create. We're going to touch a new file to play around with, an a.txt file. Now, my terminal is a little bit different than what you guys set up. Like my bash profile is a little different, so don't be alarmed. But right now, I didn't have any files in my working directory. I just touched one file. And so I want you guys to note, yours should look a little different. But once I created this file, my Git, the way that I have mine configured, is I get a question mark here at my prompt. That just means that there is a file, there is some information that Git is not tracking yet. So it's just kind of a visual FYI for me. I think you guys should actually have a small kind of a percent modulus sign. I think that's how we set up your bash profile. The point being, this is a really good, if you want to pay attention to what the terminal prompt is trying to tell you, it's just trying to visually let you know that there's changes that Git is tracking or not tracking or has already added or committed, things like that. If I do a Git status here, I can confirm that. So I'm on my master branch. I still need to do like an initial commit, and I have untracked files. The file that isn't tracked is that a.txt. Now, how can I initially tell Git that I want to start tracking this file? I want to track the changes that I'm about to make to this file. So if you want to put that into Slack, what command would I run next to make Git pay attention to that file? Yeah, I can do a git add. In this case, I'm just going to do a git add -A, which means it's going to add everything in this current directory. You could also add them each file one at a time. So I could have done like an a.txt if I wanted. Then if I do a git status, which is a really good practice, I like to do git statuses, status sci, status c, whatever. I like to do those pretty frequently, just like as a sanity check to make sure that I'm actually adding or committing the files that I think that I am. Now, when I do a git status now, I should see a different message. I see changes to be committed, and I see that a.text is now in green, meaning that it's being tracked and it's been added to my index. So with my next commit,
clarification. Now,
Yep.
one clarification though, like at the top, you have untracked files. It recognizes on your terminal, it recognizes that file exists already. A.text in red, untracked files.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it did recognize it exists, that something has changed. So when you say you're adding it so Git can keep track of it, does that mean until you physically do the add, it's not going to keep track of what changed in between adds?
Yeah, correct. That's a really good point. So Git knows about the file, it's aware of the file, but in order to track the changes, we have to tell it that we want it to watch that file. Yeah, so that's a good point. Yeah, so Git can see the files in the folder and it'll tell you, it'll list the files. But if we wanted to track it, we would need to add it to the version control software, which is what we did when we ran git add the first time. Yeah, that's a good point. And then once I did a git add and I do a git status, that file is now in green, which kind of killed two birds here. So when we did that first git add, Git now knows that we want it to watch and track changes for that file. And it also added it into kind of our index area. So this file will now be committed if we run a git commit here presently. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go ahead and do my first commit before we move forward. So I'm going to do a git commit and then a -m flag. M stands for message. There's a couple of different ways that you can add messages to your git commits. You can configure your terminal to open up Atom and open up a huge file if you want to, write something really, really robust. And actually, when you go to work at a dev shop, that may be how they want you to do it. So when you go to work at a dev shop, they may ask you to put more specifics on what that commit entails than just putting like a few words here on the command line. But for what we're doing in class, this will do the job. So here I'll keep it straight with the lesson here. I'll put, please remember this file at this time. And so it looks like Git has one file changed. It's really the only file we even have. And now if I do a git status, on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree is clean. So once I did that commit, it took a snapshot of this repo, and then it kind of wiped the slate clean. So now it knows about these files, and it's watching for new changes. So once we make changes to the file, which we'll do here in the next step, then we'll need to do another git add and a git commit and make a new snapshot. But right now, rest assured, our a.text, our beautiful file, has been committed to memory. It's been committed to our version control. I can do a git log. Git log will show you a log of the history, all of your previous commits. Right now we just have one. Here's the crazy hash so that version control can keep these things separated. The hash for this specific commit if we ever want to roll back to it, and a little bit of detail about the this commit, the date we did it, who did it, and then the commit message right there. So let's put a pin in it right there and give you guys a chance to catch up if you haven't been following along. So let's see if I have a prompt here for you. Actually, I didn't create a specific prompt, but go ahead and take a minute and create your a.text and and commit it to Git. So you'll also need to git init as well. And then give me a thumbs up once you're back up to where I am. When you do a git status, you should see this nothing to commit, working tree or working directory clean. So go ahead and do that and give me a thumbs up in Slack when you're up to speed.
Can you relate this back to your diagram of the staged site?
Sure. The second diagram or the first one?
Second one.
Yeah, so let's take a look. So if we start over here on the left, right here is where we did the a.text. So we touch a.text, and then that made an untracked file, right? And we can see that right here. If I scroll up a little bit. So I touch a.text, and when I did a git status, Git sees the file, but it's not doing anything with it. It senses its presence, but it is not tracking the changes. So right here at untracked, and then we did that git add-a. So at git add-a, it got right about here, it got to unmodified. So it's tracking the changes, but we haven't done anything to the file. We kind of skipped through this modified section because we didn't actually do anything to it. We're going to do that next. But when we did the git, actually we kind of killed two birds here, because when we did the git add for the first time on a.text, we made version control aware of it as far as tracking changes, and we also went ahead and staged it. And then down here we did that first git commit, which is here. So please remember this file at this time. So when we did the git add, it moved it to the staging area. We did the git commit, and it kind of wiped the slate clean. And so now that a.text file is in this unmodified state. So now version control is tracking the changes for that file. It knows about it and is tracking the changes. So now once we do that commit, we're pretty much going back to this area right here. And I know that because when I do a git status, after I did that git commit, on branch master, nothing to commit, working tree clean. So this unmodified area is kind of like the working tree clean for that one file. Now maybe we have 20 different files and we only added and committed one of those files. So maybe one file is in this area, maybe other files are still staged but haven't been committed, or some combination of that.
And here when you say stage, because I have a different concept of that from past work, where when you stage something, the files physically went to a different set of web servers than the production servers. But here, it's all on your computer. Is it a conceptual staging area?
No, it's if we go back up here, we just added it to the index. So Git has an index where it's tracking the changes, and it knows about like the most current version of that file, but it hasn't committed it or done the snapshot yet to memory.
So index is a log file.
When I did git log here after the commit, I could see a history of the commit. I'll say this for sometimes we have students that have like a previous background in Java or other technologies. It's good to make those comparisons, but a lot of students want to make those apples to apples. Well, this is what it was in Java. What's the exact corollary in this technology? Sometimes it's apples to apples, sometimes it's apples and oranges. So we're not, in this example, we're not dealing with any kind of production server or anything. So I wouldn't, that may be a little complex than what version control is actually doing in this instance, in this environment. We're not pushing anything to production. This is just like a local version control. Now, eventually you will push to production. You'll push to Heroku when we deploy our application. or maybe you'll even push to GitHub. So maybe you'll have like the most current version of your code locally, but you haven't saved it up in GitHub yet. You haven't pushed those changes for other people to share or to look at yet or something. But yeah, right now the only thing we've done is a git add and a git commit. And this index, that git add, it's all still locally in Git, that indexing. Yeah, Git's a pretty powerful, very robust piece of software, and we're just kind of skimming the surface right now. I hope that answered your question, Deb. So let's go on to this next section. Let's actually make a change to this file. So we've created this a.txt, but we haven't done anything with it. So what I want you guys to do, if you want to follow along, just in the interest of time, let's go ahead and open this up in Atom. So I'm going to do an Atom a.txt. So I'm telling my command line, open up this file using my Atom software. And it's actually opening up in a separate window, so I'll move it over here. So I've got my a.txt here. That's cool. Very good looking file. So go ahead inside this file and just write something, whatever you want. Hello world. Just put something in there so that Git will recognize that there has been a change made to this file. So if we go ahead and put some stuff in there and then save it, let me make that larger for you guys. And what's the command we do to check the current kind of state of our repository as far as version control? What's the command just to kind of sanity check our stuff? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, let's do a git status on here. And I'm getting this message. We saw a variant of this earlier. Changes not staged for commit. So looks like we have one file that's been modified, this a.txt. And so it's asking us if we want to add this to the index. What do we want to do with it? And what we want to do is we want to go ahead and add it. So let's do a git add. Again, I'm going to do this -A just to kind of like grab everything in my directory, although we only have one file right now. So I'll do a git add and then go ahead and do a git. Well, let's see what the git status is after that. So we made changes. We did a git status, and Git told us. Git has very, very helpful kind of prompts, kind of messages. So it's telling us, hey, you have changes that have not been staged for a commit. So we did a git add. Then when we do another git status, it tells us changes to be committed. And so now in green, that's the prompt that I have in my terminal. Now I know that this file has been added to the Git index, and now I can take a snapshot or do a git commit if I want. So I'm going to go ahead and do a git commit here. And I'll just do second commit. Very, very explicit git commit messages here. Cool. So now if we do a git log after that, we should have 2 git commits, and indeed we do. We have our first commit down here. So as you can probably deduce, these go most recent on top to the, kind of most recent to the latest, or to the latest in history. So I have the second commit up here, and then please remember the file at this time. So right now we have 2 git commits. Any questions about that process? This is something you guys are going to be doing this in your sleep. You're going to be having dreams about Git. Go ahead.
So I'm not sure if I missed a step, but it said it's saying when I hit git add, it says not a Git repository or any of the parent directories.
Okay, so do a pwd and tell me what directory you're currently in.
I'm in main directory.
What's the name of the directory?
Users Kieran 8654.
Okay, did you go to the desktop and create a test repo directory?
I did.
Okay, so let's get to your desktop and cd into your test underscore repo directory. So that's where we want to be doing this, this exercise. Yeah, so what that message is saying, as the message is pretty self-explanatory, it's just saying, hey, you're trying to do git commands and git does not exist in this repo. Because sounds like you're in maybe your home directory and you haven't git initted your home directory. So that's the kind of message that you'll get. So I think from where you are, you could do an absolute path. You could do a CD.
I CD'd into the test repo, so now I'm in test
Okay.
repo.
Cool. So do you see any kind of, so if you're looking at my screen, I know that my test repo has version control working because I see this on master. I see this extra information. So just visually, I know Git is working because it's telling me I'm on my master branch of this repo. Do you see any message like that next to your prompt in the terminal?
I'm sorry, let's see what?
Okay, so if you're looking at my screen,
Yes.
so you see right here where I'm highlighting, I have this on master.
Yes.
Do you see anything like that at all?
No.
Okay, and you're in your test repo, yes?
Yes.
Okay, just run a git init. So that's the command we did a few steps back. But if you do a git init, that will add the Git version control software to that repo.
Reinitialize existing Git repository.
Okay, so it sounds like you already had Git in that repository. If you do a git status, what does it say?
Branch master, initial commit, untracked files, 8, and then 8 text in red.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. So you touched a.text, so I would do a git add -a, capital A, and then do a git commit. Have you done a git commit yet in that repo?
I did, but it didn't work, so I just did it again, and yep, it worked.
Okay, cool. And then, yeah, if you do a git commit, and then if you do a git status, it should tell you, working directory clean, something like that.
So I did on the
Okay, let's do this. Everyone take a 5-minute break. We'll come back at 12:28 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll pick up with some GitHub stuff. So go ahead and take a fiver, and we'll come back. Kieran, do you want to share your screen?
Yes.
I just have a quick question. I did git commit A, so I can commit multiple things that I want to add, but I forgot to put a message, so it completely it opened Autumn, I think what it's called, to write the message there.
Okay, hold on one sec. Okay, let's do one at a time. Okay.
Okay. Oh yeah, that.
Okay, so Kieran, you want to walk me through?
Yes, I did the where we left off, that it's in red in A-text.
You did
so
git add. Okay.
Git add, capital A, then I did git commit, and it opened this.
Yep.
And then my terminal is here. So
yeah, so here, Kieran, here's the issue. Here's what you did not do. So you need to do git commit -m for message,
okay.
and then in quotes, put the message that you want to commit. If you don't do that, if you just do git commit, Git is going to open up the text editor of your choice. It's going to open up Atom, and it's going to ask you to put in a git commit message in Atom. Now that's totally cool and that's totally fine if you want to do that. But just to save you guys some heartache, I would suggest for now, just do git commit -m and then in quotes, put the name of that commit.
So from where I'm at now in the terminal, what do I do to get to where I need to
How
go?
do you close out of things, generally speaking, in the terminal? How do you exit out of something?
Escape?
Nope.
No?
Try a Control-C. So like 90% of the time, a Control-C should get you back to the prompt. There you go. So try that command again. Try git commit -m.
And now write a message?
Yeah.
What was the one, what did we say? Second attempt or something?
Yeah, second commit is fine. Okay, great. And then how do we check your git commit history and such?
Git status?
Okay, yeah, we can do that. What if we want to see all of the previous commits that you've done?
Status -A or something?
No, so git status will tell you like the current state of your repo. If I want to see all of the commits you've ever done, what's the command for that?
Okay.
Try git log. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing a couple times today. Just git log. Yeah, so it looks like you have second commit. So it looks like you did not do that first commit, which is no big deal. But it looks like Git is set up correctly, and yeah, you're all good.
Okay.
Cool, looking good, man. Alejandra, what's the issue?
No, I got it.
Okay. Kieran, if you wouldn't mind going off screen share, please, sir. Thank you. Alrighty, let's come on back. So we created a Git repository locally, which is awesome. Let's walk through the process of pushing this existing repo that we have locally. Let's push it up to GitHub. Not only do we want to store this information like in the cloud in case our computer blows up or something, but what if I want to share this awesome repo with one of you fine folks? If I want to have other collaborators on this code base, I need to have some way to share it with other folks, and that's what GitHub is really, really good for. So we're actually going to create a new repo in GitHub, and we're going to push this repo that we just created locally up to the cloud. This is something you guys are going to do quite frequently, and we're going to walk through the steps. Again, I would use this lesson for reference. Don't worry about like memorizing this necessarily, because with practice, again, you'll be doing this in your sleep. But I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again just to give you a heads up, and we'll walk through this process. And we can do this together. So if anything gets a little wonky or confusing, just holler. Let's walk through these first two steps. Arm in arm, hand in hand. What I want you guys to do first is go to your GitHub account. And I'll go to mine as well. And make sure that you're logged in. Make this a little larger. So I'm logged in. If I scroll over a little bit, I can see my little profile icon. So I know that I'm logged in. So from this main github.com page, go ahead and log in if you aren't. But from here, what we can do, and it's here in the image, if you hit this little plus icon in the top right, you'll see if you hover over it, it'll say create new ... So click on that drop down and you'll see a couple of options. What we want to do is create a new empty repository. So click on new repository and you're going to get to a screen that looks like this. So give me a thumbs up in Slack when you get to this screen here. And I'm going to wait for 6 thumbs ups and then we'll move forward. Okay, I guess, oh, good, sweet. All right, nice. So our next step, oops, try that again. Our next few steps are gonna be like so. So we wanna give this repository a name. You can name it whatever you want, but generally, like the way I like to do things is I like to name this repository, my GitHub repository, I like to name it the same thing as my local name of my repository locally. It doesn't have to be that. You can name this whatever you want, but I suggest that you name it test repo. So go ahead and do that. You can put a description in here if you want. So I'll put, it actually is good practice to like put in a description. It's very polite for other people. I doubt anyone's gonna come check the code base of this test repo, but just in case. So I'll put, you know, GitHub lesson practice or something. Now, when you guys get to your project time and you deploy your apps, one thing that I personally am kind of militant about is I like you guys to put your deployed app link right here in the description. So when someone comes to your repo and they think, hey, I want to check out the deployed version of this repo, they don't have to search around and scroll and try to find the link. It's right there at the very top. It's the first thing they see and they can just click on it. So that's something that I really like to do with my repos. We're going to make this public. You can pay to get private repos. It may be, there's different tiers. I think like 5 private repos, maybe like $8 a month or something, unless they've increased the fee. Actually, that's not true. I think they just, I think they have like a $10 plan for like unlimited repos or something like that. But if you want to make it private, you certainly can. Now, what we want to do here is each GitHub repo needs a README. Now, if we had created a README locally, that's totally fine. But we didn't touch a README file locally. So we're going to let GitHub go ahead and create one for us. So we're going to click this initialize this repository with a README. READMEs are really good. As you guys have probably already deduced, it's good to put like maybe the technologies you use for your app. Maybe if someone wants to clone this repo locally and run it locally, it's really good practice to put the instructions on how to do so. You can put your contact information in there. You can put the screenshots of your wireframes and such. There's a lot of good information, documentation that you can put in for your repos. And I personally think that a really well-written, well-documented repo speaks a lot about you as a developer. It's very professional and it's very, I just think it's very polite and easy to read README. It speaks volumes, I think, for you as a developer. Anywho, once we do all that, we should be good to go. So the last thing we want to do is click this Create Repository button, the big green thing here in the bottom. So go ahead and click that and give me some thumbs ups in Slack when you finish those 3 steps. And you should see something like this. It's just an empty repo, but this is great. So now we'll be in good shape to push our local repo up to this empty container in GitHub. All right, cool. We got 8 thumbs ups. So the last thing we want to do, So we have our local repo and we have our GitHub repo. We need to let them know about each other. And that's what this next step entails. So we're going to do this from the terminal, from the command line. We're going to do this git command called git remote add origin. Now, this command will make more sense as we start adding, as we start deploying to production and such. But right now, we're telling Git to add a remote URL. We're telling our local repo, we're pointing it to this GitHub repo where we want to store our data. And we're calling this the origin. So the origin refers to the Git, that's kind of the code name for the GitHub repo where we're going to push our code to. And that'll make more sense as we go through this, but let's just get this thing wired up to start. So actually, I apologize, we need to grab the URL first. So to grab the URL, what you can do, I'll put that in there. So if you're on your empty repo, go to this clone or download drop down. And what we're actually going to do is we're actually going to just grab this URL. We're not necessarily going to clone or anything because we already have this repo locally. But click on this green button and then click on this little clipboard, and it'll copy the URL to our origin, to our GitHub repo. Now, give me a thumbs up real quick. Maddie B did run you through adding SSH keys this morning. Okay, so I think we should be good. Let's try it out with SSH. So actually, either one of these should work. The benefit of SSH is that sometimes it keeps you from like having to type in your username and password every time you want to push something to GitHub. But go ahead and click on this Use SSH. It should be right there in the corner. And now you should see Clone with SSH here. It's just two different ways to wire up your local and your GitHub repos. So once you see that, go ahead and click the clipboard. Then we're going to go into the terminal. And make sure, this is really important, make sure that you're actually in your test repo. Because if we run this command from some other repo, it's not going to do us any good. Because we want to add the GitHub URL to this specific repo. So go ahead and run that. We'll do a git remote add origin. And then you can Command V, paste in that link, the URL, and then hit enter. And to test that out and make sure that it took, you can run git remote -v, and you should see two different origins. So does anyone want to take a stab? We only added one URL to this repo. Why do we have two different origins here? Does anyone want to take a stab at that? Nice. Yeah, so Alan says one is for retrieving and one is for pushing. Yeah, absolutely right. So one is for retrieving or fetching. So you can see fetch in parens there. And then one is for pushing. Yeah, absolutely. So if there happens to be new information that we want to pull down locally, we would use, actually it's the same URL. We would just do like a git pull origin master or a git push origin master. Yeah, very nice. So give me a thumbs up in Slack if you can run that git remote -v and you see your two origin URLs there. Cool. And then once we do that, I think we're good and wired up. So the last piece that we want to do is we actually want to push our local data. Well, actually, the first thing we want to do Well, let's watch it fail first. Let's do that. Go ahead and do a git push origin master. So we want to push that a.txt file. We want to push all of that information up to this GitHub. So I want you guys to run a git push origin master. And you guys should get some garbage that looks like this. So you guys can see that I have like this crazy wonky error message. So you guys should be seeing this as well. Oh boy, that is scary. What are we gonna do? Does someone want to read this message and let us know what is happening here? Why are we getting this error? Okay, Audrey, if you do a git remote -v, oh yeah, I think you got the same. Yeah, so what is this error telling us?
If I'm reading it correctly, and I'm just, stabbing into the dark here, it says something, it doesn't match anything. So the source master does not match any. So I'm assuming it's just saying what's on GitHub and Git doesn't match what I'm trying to push. So I can't match them up to push it onto GitHub.
Close, but our stuff is matching. It's not that. Here's the key. Here's the key line from this error message. What is that telling us?
Yeah.
Updates were rejected because the remote contains work that you did not, in the new line, have locally. So if we go back to the repo, where's my repo? It's right here. Yeah. What does my GitHub repo have that I don't have locally?
The README.
Yeah. Yeah, so we forgot about the README. Well, that's no biggie. So all we need to do is we want to pull that file locally. So you're going to hear this a lot. We're going to need to pull before we push. So we need to make sure that these two entities are in sync. So before we can push, let's do a git pull. And we want to pull the master branch of our origin. Remember that origin is just referring to our GitHub repo. It's just a fancy syntax. So go ahead and do a git pull. Origin master. And you should see something like what I have here. Don't worry about the commits because the GitHub doesn't really have any commits yet because we haven't pushed anything. But you should see it's counting the objects because we have our Git folder, our a.txt, and then our README file. And then if we do a git status, we should be good.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When I did that, everything went well. It said that it was done, but it opened Atom for me. And now it says merge branch master.
Yeah, no, so that's no worries. So it opens Atom because sometimes if there's some sort of merge conflict, Git's really good about having you document that merge conflict. So what it'll do is it'll automatically open up your text editor and already have like the file open for you. And all you need to do is like put in some sort of, I'm trying to merge my GitHub with my local Git repository or something like that. You can also just like close out of that file and it should just go ahead and continue the process. But let's see, it didn't actually pull from me. Using to merge unrelated histories, let's see. Try that one more time.
That's the same error message I get.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, just hold tight 1 second. Let's see what's going on here. No worries. What are we doing wrong here? Give me one sec here. So everyone was getting this refusing to merge unrelated histories. Okay.
No, I got something different. I
Okay.
got counting objects 3 done.
Okay, that's good. So it sounds like yours took. I wonder if this has to do with the SSH versus HTTPS. So just give me one sec here. We can go back and reconfigure it, but just hold tight just a second. So Audrey, did you use the, did you happen to use the SSH URL or the HTTPS URL? Just curious.
I believe I used SSH.
Okay. Okay. Hold on one sec.
Definitely the SSH.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna try with HTTPS, just see if we get any changes. It's not the end of the world. We can just move forward with cloning our repo, but I'm just gonna try to reset it. Git remote -v. That is a bugger. Wonder if it's because we updated our homebrew. Let's see. Well, I'll check that out at the break. I think it may be something with this newer version of Git or something. We shouldn't have to do that. But if you guys want to add this allow unrelated histories, you should be fine. So let me put this into Slack. So try running git pull origin master and then that -- allow unrelated histories. And I think that will kind of override that message and let us pull it. This isn't like a deal breaker or anything. I'll just run this. I'll check this out at lunch. Maybe the new version of Git. But give me a thumbs up if that allowed you to pull down the README. And so then if you do an ls, you should see your README and your a.text. So you should see something like this. Yeah, Alejandro, that looks fine. Yeah, so again, to confirm that you pulled it successfully, just do an ls and you should see a README file and an a.text. No worries. Kieran, couldn't find remote ref of unrelated. So Kieran, if you do a get remote -v, you should see 2 origin options. So let me know if you don't see that. Oh, you got 2? Okay. Okay, Deb, terminal didn't come back from git pull. Okay, so if it didn't come back, check and see if it opened up like a new add-on window or something. Maybe it wants you to type some sort of message.
Oh, okay.
It's a typo.
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's git pull origin master, not original master. Deb.
It says origin.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I mistyped it in Slack, but it's correct in terminal.
Yeah, so some of you, Adam may have opened automatically. So that's kind of a feature of Git, which is really cool. It wants to make really good documentation for why you're doing stuff. which is really important. Not only I can't remember things I did like 2 weeks ago, but if you're working on a team, it's really good to document, why did I have to add this allow unrelated histories flag to this command or something like that. So Git's really good if it needs more information or if it wants more documentation. It'll go ahead and open up your text editor of choice, and it'll ask you, it'll open it up for you. So all you have to do is type in some stuff and then save it and close it, and then it should move forward.
Yeah, I did notice it opened it because it's on my other screen. So I was like looking here and
Yeah, no worries.
I had that screen, but you said to just close it. I did, and that fixed everything for me. But let's say I wanted to add a comment in there. Once I type it in, how do I guess, go back and finish that?
Yeah, let's, that's not really mission critical right now. Let's come back to that, okay?
Okay.
So once you're successfully able to pull your information, now let's see if we can push this goofy repo up to GitHub. So once you do that, let's do a git push origin master. And I'm going to do the same. Sorry, my dog's going bonkers. So let's run this git push origin master. And no news is good news. And so now if you go to your repo and refresh, you should see your two README and the a.text file that we pushed from local. So that's where we should be. And that'll kind of get us up to speed. So let's put a pin in that and make sure that we're all working. So give me a thumbs up in Slack. Let's see. Merge branch master. Yeah, so guys, if you get, so you see Mike's, the merge branch master of GitHub there that Mike put into Slack. If this happens, again, Git is just asking for you to put some more detail on the activity that you're doing. Why are you merging branch master of GitHub into this other repo and such? You don't even have to put anything in there. You can just close that file, close out of Atom. Actually, you don't have to close out of Atom. If you just want to close that file, then Git will, complete the process. And so if you guys do have Atom open up automatically, no worries. Just close out that file and Git will take care of biz after that. Kieran failed to push some rest to Git. Okay, so Kieran, as the error suggests, maybe try that git pull origin master with that allow unrelated histories flag, and make sure that you have the README locally, and then try that git push again and see if that's helpful. Because it looks like maybe the GitHub and the local Git and GitHub are a little bit out of sync. By the way, like this, this Git and GitHub, sometimes it's seamless and other times there's just a little bit of like the wires get crossed. This is very typical of when you're working on a team. I mean, it's sometimes wires can get crossed when it's just you and your own repo, but imagine when we put you into group projects, seeing these, I wouldn't even really call some of these errors. It's just kind of like the process that happens. But getting more familiar and comfortable with this stuff, it's only going to serve you in the long run. So this isn't anything atypical for sure. So give me a thumbs up in Slack if you can refresh your GitHub, your test repo on GitHub, and if you see those two files, README and a.text. And I'll put that into Slack for you to give me a thumbs up. If you have two files, that's my caveman speak. Give me thumbs up if you have two files on your GitHub repo. Got to work on my stuff here. Work on my syntax. Cool. That's awesome, you guys. So does someone want to come on mic before we actually clone our media repo for you guys to have and love and delicately caress each day? Does someone want to quickly walk through what we just did with our Git and GitHub? Kind of the steps we just went through in the past hour. I'm going to stop my screen share for a moment while we talk about that. Does someone want to, just in broad strokes, kind of talk about what we just walked through?
So basically, we pulled the information to sync our GitHub repository with our local repository. And then once they were synced, we pushed that a.txt file back up to the GitHub repository.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the first thing we did like an hour ago before the break is we created a local, we made a directory called test repo, and we put one file in there, and we got our git init, we got our version control working locally, and then we decided, hey, this repo is really, really awesome. I shouldn't hoard it with myself. I need to share this with the development world because my a.txt is so groundbreaking. So what we wanted to do is push that up to GitHub. So we went to our GitHub, we went onto our profile, or in this case, you can create a new repo from several places, but when in doubt, you can just go to github.com and log in. And we clicked that top little, that cross and create a new repo. We named it test repo. And in this example, we went ahead and had GitHub create a README file for us because every repo demands a README file. We must have one. So we just let GitHub create it. So we had a README file up in GitHub, and we were trying to connect that with our local, Git repository, and the files were out of sync. So this is something that you're going to have to do. This is a rinse repeat type thing. You're going to have to do this each time that you create a new repo and want to send it up to GitHub. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Matt. But yeah, so we did a pull before we did a push, right? What did we do to tell our local repo, how did it know where to push that information? So we had our GitHub repo, we had our local repo. What did we do to let the two know about each other?
We put in the URL of the GitHub repo.
Yeah, and how many, what is that URL called? What do we refer to our GitHub repo as, URL-wise? What do we call that to? Yeah, git remote, good. Specifically, what do we call that GitHub remote? What's the term we use for it?
Clone?
Huh?
Is it a clone?
It's not a clone. It's close.
The repository, is that what you're looking for?
It is a repository, but remember when we did a git remote -v? How many URLs did we have, first of all?
Two.
And what did those two URLs do?
Fetch and push.
Yeah, or pull and push. They call it fetch, but it's just pulling it down. But what did we refer to those two URLs as? Do a git remote -v, and what are those called as far as Git? What does Git call them?
Origin.
Yeah, it calls them origin. I just point that out because when we deploy your apps, we're going to deploy to a service called Heroku, for example. When you do a git remote -v, you're going to have 4 URLs. You're going to have 2 URLs for your origin or your GitHub, and you're also going to have 2 URLs for your deployed application on this other thing called Heroku, which is going to be our production server environment. So when you do git remote -v, you may have several different URLs that you're pushing and pulling information from. Actually, maybe you're pulling from one GitHub repo and pushing to another. Like you can have several of those. But your origin refers to kind of the source code for that repo up in GitHub. So you're pretty much always going to have an origin at a minimum. You'll have 2. Cool, excellent work, you guys. So it's 1 o'clock. The last thing we want to do is let's go ahead and get you guys set up with the WDI remote MADI repository so you guys can officially pull down new homeworks, new lessons, and such. So let's do that next, and then we'll break for lunch. I'm going to share my screen again. And what this process is going to entail is it's actually going to entail forking and cloning our main repo. So what is forking? The fork and pull model lets anyone fork an existing repository and push changes to their personal fork without requiring access be granted to the source repository. So what does that mean? Well, you guys are in for a special treat, because I'm going to whip this out. This is one of my goals for you guys. So we have little whiteboards here. I'm going to draw you guys a diagram because I am a Picasso at this stuff. So I'm going to share my whiteboard real quick, and we're going to see what happens here. Let's see what a GitHub fork versus clone looks like. And while I'm setting this up, does someone want to come on mic or put into Slack, and in your own words, what is the difference between a fork and a clone? What is the difference? Can you guys see this whiteboard? Give me a thumbs up. You just see like a white screen? Okay, cool. So let's talk about the difference here.
I guess like if you're forking a repo, doesn't that already make a clone or like a copy of it? But you can actually commit, add, git, put stuff up, pull stuff down, whereas the other one you can't.
Yeah, well, one is your version of it, so you don't need permissions because it's your version. And the other one, anyone guess what this thing is? Ooh.
It's the new MacBook.
That's right. And it has like the little butterfly touch thingy. Okay, so that's a really good description. Let's just break this down a little bit. So I think it's really janky when you talk about the cloud, to make an actual cloud, but I'm very literal. So let's call this GitHub. And this is your repo, or your profile rather. Let's call this where you have all of your stuff. Bear with me. We're going to get there, folks. So this is your profile. I've been practicing this too. It's pretty awesome. All right, anyway, so this is like one of those etch and sketches. So let's say that over here, here's our class repo. I'm going to be so good at this in a few weeks. So our class repo, only like me and Colin and Matt and Christine can edit this repo or have write access to it. Only we can like push new stuff, remove stuff, edit stuff and such. But we still want you guys to have access to the information in there. So what we're going to do next is you guys are actually going to make a copy. And this is going to be called a fork. And this is still just a copy of the repo. However, you're going to own this copy. So you can do whatever you want with it, which is pretty nice. So you'll be pushing your homework to this copy, to this forked version of the repo. You can pretty much do whatever you want to it. You can also pull changes, pull new homeworks, pull new lessons through your clone down to your local machine. So a fork is a copy that still lives in the cloud. Now a clone, the only difference is that a clone is a copy that you pull locally. It's pretty much on a high level, the only difference. A fork is your copy, but it lives in your GitHub. And a clone is a copy, but it lives locally. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a forked copy of the repo that lives in your GitHub, and then you guys are going to clone your own personal version. You're going to clone it down to your local machine. So that's how this process works. This is considered an open, kind of the open source paradigm, if you will. So let's say that there's a code base. Let's say that you want to contribute to the Rails code base. Rails is open source, right? Open source is really good because that means other people are invested. Other people can make it better. Other people can fix bugs or add new features and such. So the Rails code base, they're not going to let you just like add stuff willy-nilly, right? That's probably not maintainable. What you can do though is you can make a forked copy of the Rails source code. You can copy it to your GitHub, and then you can make all the changes you want. You can create feature branches. You can play around with it. And then at some point in time, when that code is fully baked and you feel pretty good about it, you can do what's called a pull request to the Rails core team, ask them to pull in your new code into the Rails code base and add a new feature or fix a bug. It's a pretty cool paradigm. This is essentially the process you guys are going to follow for submitting homework. So we want you guys to get practice because this is, pretty much the way it's done in the development community. Not only something like Rails, but just when you go to work at a dev shop, you're probably going to have one person that's kind of the code czar of a code base. They're going to be in charge of maintaining the code. And if you're working on that code base, you're going to submit a pull request and ask that maintainer of the code to pull in your changes or pull in your features and such. So that's why we try to replicate that here in class. Okay, so what do you guys think of that drawing? Is that pretty sweet or what? I don't even know if I can save that. I'll do a quick screenshot. Not that anybody wants to save that. I'm gonna frame it though.
Put it on your fridge.
I will put it on my fridge for sure. My dog will bark at it incessantly. Okay, so I hope that drawing was somewhat helpful. What we're gonna do is we're gonna fork the Matey repo, and you guys are gonna clone it down in broad strokes. So Mike asks, so the clone is the little Git file on my computer, and fork is the one on the site with push and pull syncing the two. Yeah, so the fork lives in GitHub. The little Git file, the little Git file is not the entire repo, right? The .git file just maintains like the Git history, the Git commits, the differences between commits. But the repo itself has like hundreds and hundreds of files. That .git is just kind of like the brains of the operation, the captain's log. It keeps track of all the changes. Cool, so let's get through this. I think we can get through this before lunch. So I'm gonna put that first.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Sure. Yep.
So just to get an idea, so let's say you want me to fork a homework assignment on my T, and that will make a copy on my GitHub, my profile, and then I would pull that and make a clone into my desktop.
No, let's hold off on the homework. It's actually much simpler than that.
Okay.
We'll talk about that later, submitting homework and such. Let's just fork and clone the repo right now. You're kind of on the right track, but it's actually not even that complex. So let's shelf that for just a minute. So I just put the first 4 steps into Slack. So the first thing I want you guys to do is, let's see here. We don't even need to delete. Let's just go to step, sorry, this is cloning practice. I'm gonna get rid of that. You guys are pros. Let's just move down the lesson a little bit. Let's move down to fork the student repo. You guys feel good about all that other stuff. You guys are gonna be doing cloning and pushing and pulling like on a daily basis. We just want to get the class repo down right now. So let's actually do these steps. The first thing I would like you guys to do is go ahead and go to the WDI Remote Matey GitHub page. And the link, I'll paste the link into Slack. This is a really good link to bookmark or to put up on your bookmarks bar. You want to have access to it. So go ahead and go to that link. I will do the same. And you guys can put this kind of wherever you want. I would suggest that you put this repo maybe on your desktop or in your home directory. So right now, we're just going to do it on the desktop for now. You guys can drag it into your home directory later if you want, but just to keep it simple, we're going to fork and clone this, but we're going to put it on your desktop. So make sure that you're logged in and go ahead and go to GitHub right here. And if you look in the top rightish corner, you should see a fork button. And it looks like a fork, which is pretty helpful, pretty literal and helpful. What I want you guys to do is click on that fork button, and you should have another screen pop up. Now, I belong to a bunch of different organizations. You guys should probably only have like maybe 2 organizations. I think you guys should have your own kind of personal org or personal profile. And then I think you guys should belong to like a General Assembly organization, and that's fine. But what you guys want to fork this to is your own personal profile, your own personal repo. So click on fork, and it says, where should we fork this repository? And since we want you guys to own it, go ahead and click on your avatar right there. And that'll take you to a screen like this. And you should see something that looks very similar up in the top left-hand corner. It should say your name / WDI remote Métis, and then look right beneath it, and it should say forked from, and that's the link to kind of the main parent or source directory that you're forking from. That's how you know that you're on your version of that forked repo. So give me a thumbs up in Slack if you see something similar to the screenshot I just put in. You should see your name / WDI remote Métis and such. And you can fork pretty much anything that's public. I mean, if you wanted to, or well, WDI remote Métis is private, but you guys have access to it. But you know, the Rails source code, any kind of third-party libraries, actually, I mean, they want people to use their stuff and contribute to it and to make it better. So you guys could fork whatever you wanted, you know, to work on it yourself. Cool, 9 thumbs ups, very nice. Congrats, folks, you just forked your first repo. Very exciting. Cool, so that's the first thing. We just forked it. Now you have a version that you own. Now let's clone that down locally to your machine. The way we're going to do that, I'll paste these instructions into Slack, and we'll walk through them. The first thing I want you guys to do is go ahead and CD onto your desktop. And if you want the shortcut for that, it's going to look like this. Just in case you're like down in the depths of your machine somewhere. That absolute path should pretty much, I'm fairly certain on all of your devices, this should get you to the desktop. Generally, your desktop lives in your home directory. That tilde in the command represents your home directory. And again, you can put this wherever, but for now, for this exercise, we're just going to put it on the desktop so it's easy to find. So I'm going to CD to my desktop. The next thing I want you guys to do is go back to your cloned version, excuse me, your forked version of the repo. So make sure that your fork, you know, make sure that you see this in the upper left. This is what we want to clone locally. We don't want to clone the source Métis repo. We want to clone your version of it. So to do that, go over here to this green cloner download, and we'll go ahead and use SSH. That's cool. And click the copy to the clipboard. Go ahead and click that. And then I want you guys to run a git clone and paste in your forked version. And you'll see that it's doing a lot of downloading because there's a lot of files, like 575 files. Actually, by the end of the repo, at the end of the course, we're going to have, I mean, probably a couple of thousand files in there. I want you guys to run a git clone and then your of your fork. And now if you go to the desktop, you should see that. So if I do an ls, right there I have my WDI. Actually, I think it's this one. I have an alias on my desktop. But if you cd into WDI remote MADI, then do an ls, you should see that folder structure and everything. So give me a thumbs up in Slack once you run this git clone command successfully. And remember that it's git clone and then your URL of your forked version. So you guys made a fork, which still lives in GitHub, and then you guys are cloning that one down. Cool, so we got 8, very nice. Very nice. Now the last thing we want to do, so right now, if you guys go ahead and cd into your WDI remote MADI repo. And then do a git remote -v. So if you cd into it and run a git remote -v, you should all have 2 origin URLs, right? A fetch and a push. This refers to your forked version. Now, what if we want to get data, the homeworks, the lessons from the actual source? Well, we're going to need to add 2 more URLs to your configuration. And that's going to look like so. We're going to set an upstream URL. So upstream refers to where you got your fork from. It refers to the upstream version of this repo. So what you guys are going to do, you may want to type this in longhand from the screenshot, but let's add that URL. So we're going to do a git remote add upstream, because this is not our origin we're adding an upstream URL. So add that upstream, and you can add the same URL that's on the main repo here. So we want to get the one, I'll paste this into Slack just so it's not as confusing. So for the upstream, we want to pull it from the literal source, WDI remote MADI. And I'll paste this into Slack just so there isn't any confusion. So that's what we want to run from the command line. And now just to check to make sure that took, now if you do a git remote -v, now we have 4 URLs listed, which is crazy. We have our 2 origins. The origin is what belongs to you, that's your forked version. And then the upstream refers to the upstream, the main parent, the main WDI remote repo that we all push and add new material to. So going forward, we'll give you guys a heads up, but going forward, if we say, hey, we usually do this maybe twice a day, like once in the morning or once after lunch. But if we say, hey, we just added a new lesson or added a new homework or some, something to the repo, we'll ask you guys to do a git pull upstream master. To pull stuff from the parent repo. And we'll obviously, give you guys a cue on when to do that. But that's how that will work. And this is what we're going to be doing, throughout the rest of the course. So you guys are going to get very, very familiar with how this works, very intimate with it. But give me a thumbs up in Slack if you can run a git remote -v and you get 4 URLs back, 2 origin and 2 upstream. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up on that one. Cool, got 8 thumbs up. Nice. I'm going to come off of screen share. And does anyone have any questions about what we just did? We're going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to let Christina and Matt talk a little bit more about the specifics of the homework pulling and submissions and stuff. But now we should be pretty set up and in good shape. So this is what you're going to be doing on a daily basis. And you're going to get super comfortable with it. I tell students, like, if you want my personal 2 cents, in my opinion, the most important skills that you'll leave this course with, it's not knowing Angular backwards and forwards and being an expert, because you aren't going to be an expert. It's not knowing Ruby and Rails backwards and forwards and being an expert, because you aren't going to be an expert in 13 weeks. The most important marketable skills that you're going to leave this class with, we started with them yesterday. It's knowing how to not touch your mouse to use the terminal. It's knowing good Git practices, knowing how to, connect repos, or how to collaborate with your teammates at a dev shop using GitHub and using Git and version control. Those are like some very, very essential key tools that are going to make you super, super marketable to future employers. So these are the skills that are really, really important, in my opinion. So knowing Angular backwards and forwards is cool, but if you know this stuff, you're going to be much more valuable, and you're just going to be able to get plugged in to any work environment that's out there, any team. So any questions before we wrap up? We're a little early for lunch, so I'm going to put a pin in it there. We'll hop into JavaScript after lunch. But any thoughts or questions?
I just want to know if we had to do that last command git pull upstream master. Do you want me to actually run that?
Yeah, you can go ahead and run that. You should be up to date, because I haven't added anything in the last 5 minutes. But
Okay.
If you just want to get the practice, sure. Like I said, we'll give you guys a heads up, usually like first thing in the morning for a morning exercise. We'll do in the evening when Matt pushes homework and such. We'll give you guys a heads up, like, hey, do a Git pull upstream master. Let's talk about the homework and stuff. But yeah. The most important thing is my beautiful. I'll put it in Slack, actually, because that was such a great work of art. I really want to share it with y'all. I think it's this one. Is it this one? I see all the links to the screenshots, but I can't see the previews for them. Anyway, I'll paste it in later. The most important thing is just understanding the difference between a fork and a clone. Does someone want, before we break, give us the kind of the quick and dirty on the difference between a fork and a clone? Christina?
Oh, I was waiting to actually ask another question, but a fork is when you copy it to your GitHub account, and a clone is when you make it local on your desktop.
That's perfect. Yeah, I hate to be really redundant, but it's sometimes that's kind of a tricky thing to get comfortable with. So that's why we try to repeat that. Sorry, so you had a question as well?
Yeah, I actually, when I'm trying to clone the WDIR remote maybe, mine keeps asking me for a username and password.
Did you use the SSH URL or the HTTPS URL?
Oh, the HTTPS is the wrong one.
Yeah, maybe actually, if you just want to delete that folder from your desktop and just reclone it, and try that SSH. That's one reason we wanted to use SSH, because that should not ask you for your username and password each time. If it continues to do that, just let one of us know. We'll get you straightened out.
Okay.
Yeah, because that gets really tedious having to put that in all the time. All right, cool. Great work this morning, folks. Have a great lunch. We'll come back at 2:30 Eastern, and we'll hop into JavaScript and control flow. Hopefully this afternoon, again, it's a lot. I'm hoping it's all familiar and it's some reviews. So I just want to put you guys in the breakout rooms and give you some exercises to work on together and pair program and get you guys some good hands-on time. So that's our plan for this afternoon. Have a great lunch. We'll see you at 2:30.